long-awaited season of The Umbrella Academy is here, and of course, we've already binged it. If you haven't had a chance yet, hold off on this video for now because there will be spoilers, so consider that your warning. But if you're all caught up, let's take a look back and go over some of the Easter eggs, hidden references, and nods to the comic you might have missed the first time around. Has been a subplot over the course of The Umbrella Academy, and it's not surprising considering whatever is going on with her and Luther. I honestly can't tell if it's the adopted siblings thing or the fact that Luther has a gorilla body that's weirder at this point. Anyway, in the first season, we learned Allison has an ex-husband named Peter and a daughter named Claire, and both of them were on the cover of the magazine that we saw an officer reading in the beginning of the first season. Thankfully, our heroes survived the apocalypse, but ended up in different time periods near the Avon Theater, whose movie offerings changed between several Umbrella Academy members. When Ben and Klaus showed up in 1960, the theater was showing the exceptionally fitting film Curse of the Undead. By 1961, when Allison made her debut, it changed to Curse of the Werewolf. This could be a reference to the fact that she was cursed to live without her voice and power following her first season confrontation with Vanya, or it could be a nod to her preoccupation with the moon because of the time her brother Luther spent there. Vanya and Five showed up in 1963 when Kiss of the Vampire was playing in stereo surround sound, which seems particularly poignant for poor Vanya. Another noticeable background in the first episode is a shop called Cecilio's Children's Clothing Store. One of the child-sized mannequins is dressed like the fictional character Madeline from the book of the same name by Ludwig Bemelmans. I was disappointed that we didn't see more of Hazel and his lady love in the first season, but before he was taken down by the Swedes, he managed to slip something into Five's jacket pocket. Later, it was revealed to be the video footage filmed by a charming elderly couple named Dan and Edna Frankel, who were recording their trip to Dallas and, by extension, JFK's infamous motorcade. The Frankel tape was a major motivator this season, and also a likely nod to the real-life Zapruder film. This footage, taken by a man named Abraham Zapruder, gave us the most comprehensive view of JFK's motorcade. It's known as the most important 26 seconds of film in history, but to be fair, that was a popular expression before James Cameron created Titanic, so maybe historians should, look into updating that. In Season 2, we were introduced to a woman named Lila, who spent time with Diego in an institution. Later, we learned the handler had adopted her in the same way Thanos adopted all of his children. The penultimate episode of the series is called 743, and it was revealed that this was the case number which involved Lila's biological parents being taken out by Number 5. We also saw AJ spell out 743 with Pebbles when he was swimming around in a fishbowl on the handler's desk as a way to get a message to Herb, but 743 was foreshadowed way before this. In the second episode of the series, a much more mobile AJ explained why the handler was being demoted, and among his various grievances, he mentioned the 743 incident.
Remember that whole 743 incident?
The Umbrella Academy left off on a major cliffhanger, but if I'm being honest here, it just left me thinking a lot about birds. No, I'm not losing my mind, at least I don't think I am. I'm talking about the fact that there were so many moments involving birds this season. When Elliot talks about getting supplies to develop film, he mentions that he wants to avoid the park because there's been too many pigeons flying around.
But I gotta cut through the park and there's this overbreed of pigeons.
Elliot.
Then when Vanya, Sissy, and Harlan are playing hide and seek, a bird surprises Vanya when she enters the barn. More birds fly over Klaus's van in episode 3. We see Harlan showing off his powers with a toy bird. And we learn that thanks to mucking up the timeline, the Umbrella Academy is now the Sparrow Academy. Is it a coincidence that 1963 is also the year Alfred Hitchcock's famous film The Birds was released? Or have I just gone completely bird-brained at this point? In non-bird related references, we have a scene in which Diego and Five go after their father, Reginald Hargreaves, after tracking him down using some archaic technology known as a phone book. While going through some papers, Five manages to find an invitation addressed to Reginald from the Consulate of Mexico and Mr. Hoyt Hillenkoetter. Roscoe Henry Hillenkoetter was a real person, and he was the first CIA director after it was created in 1947. Everyone in the Umbrella Academy has impressive powers, and their comic book counterparts have even more. In order to impress his followers, Klaus shows off some skills with the help of his ghostly brother Ben, including one in which he appeared to levitate a few feet above the ground. Comic book fans may have gotten a chuckle out of this one since it's something Klaus can do in the source material without poor Ben having to lend a hand. Hillenkoetter wasn't the only real-life historical figure to merit a mention in this season of the Umbrella Academy. Luther got a job working for a man named Jack Ruby, who you might know as the person who took out Lee Harvey Oswald. While the real Jack Ruby wasn't anywhere near as powerful or prestigious as this fictional counterpart, there were some similarities, including one we saw in episode 3. We saw him with an adorable dachshund, which makes sense considering Jack actually had one, named Sheba. While Jack broke the law, Sheba was presumably being a good girl inside his car, which led one of his sisters to remark that his crime wouldn't have been premeditated because his brother would have left Sheba somewhere safer if he knew what he was going to do. Back in the fictional world of the Umbrella Academy, we saw a man standing on the sidewalk with a sign reading, "The end is nigh." This is almost certainly a reference to the famous Watchmen graphic novel by Alan Moore, and it probably won't surprise you to know that the Umbrella Academy author Gerard Way is a huge fan of his work. He cites Moore as one of his inspirations and said that he wouldn't have been able to create his own fictional superheroes without his influence. We also saw this Doomsday Prophet back in the first episode, when Luthor first emerged in the 1960s. Little does this guy know that he was actually right about the world ending. Well, sort of. In this same scene with the Doomsday Prophet, we also saw Luthor going out for a jog, looking an awful lot like another fictional strongman. He looks like he's going out for a Rocky Balboa training montage, and is even dressed up like the titular hero from Rocky during his infamous montage. Of course, Rocky didn't trip because he thought he saw his sister, for whom he has romantic feelings, but hey, every Easter egg doesn't have to be perfect. Although I have to admit that I'm surprised to see him working out since he told Five he doesn't even know what a spotter is. Although, to be honest, I'm not too familiar with the way gorillas stay in shape. Speaking of staying in shape, Luthor apparently does know how to cultivate mass since we saw him chowing down at a barbecue restaurant just before running into Allison. Clearly, he's bummed out after realizing that she's married and is stuffing his face in a gross but, if I'm being honest, relatable way. While we didn't see Luthor pile on the pounds like Thor in Avengers Endgame, in the comic book, number 1 does significantly bulk up after falling into a deep depression. This barbecue scene was likely a nod to this particular comic book element, even though Luthor must have jogged off all those calories at some point off screen. The 4th episode of Season 2 is called The Majestic 12, and we learn that Reginald Hargreaves is a member of this secretive organization. This is one of the many elements of the Umbrella Academy that has a real-life basis. Well, okay, kind of. See, the Majestic 12 could be a real organization, depending on who you ask. Many conspiracy theorists that are interested in UFOs believe that the Majestic 12 is a group founded by former President Harry S. Truman to deal with recovering and investigating alien aircrafts. The FBI investigated supposed evidence surrounding the group and declared it a hoax, but that hasn't stopped people from believing. However, the Majestic 12's extraterrestrial connection makes sense, considering a big reveal about Reginald that we'll talk about a little bit later on. Speaking of dear old dad, family meetings at the Umbrella Academy tend to vary between bad and terrible, so the group is understandably apprehensive about meeting with Reginald even though he's kind of not their dad yet. Time travel has a way of making complicated family relationships even more so. In order to keep things civil, Vanya suggests that they use a conch shell to decide who gets to speak, and anyone not holding the shell must remain quiet and listen.
Diego, you don't have the conch.
If this meeting strategy sounds familiar, it might be because it's one utilized in the famous 1854 novel Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This book tells the story of kids trying to govern themselves on a deserted island. Spoiler alert, it does not go particularly well. Not that the Umbrella Academy attempts at organization tend to go well either, much to the frustration of number 5, who manages to be the oldest of the group of siblings all born at the same time. He made a deal with the handler and got his hands quite messy to say the least in order to secure a briefcase to bring them all back to their proper place on the timeline. But when several of his siblings failed to show up on time, 5 understandably grew frustrated and exclaimed that all they had to do was be there, and it wasn't as if they had to defeat a giant sea serpent. In But the Past Ain't Through With You, the Umbrella Academy did fight a sea serpent, who attacked Japan after being enraged that a toy maker was profiting off unlicensed depictions of his character. I know, I didn't realize monsters were interested in copyright law either. Plenty of strange things happen in the Umbrella Academy, and this season, one of the most disconcerting moments was seeing a human version of Grace with a Texas accent. This Grace was dating Reginald and decided to do some digging when strange things kept happening. She went through his paperwork, finding photos of people like Fidel Castro, Lyndon B. Johnson, JFK, and a map of the motorcade. But if you blinked, you might have missed that the chalkboard had plans for a televator, the next great mode of transportation. While it might not have caught on as well as Reginald would have liked, he did go on to invent it later on. In the first episode, it certainly seemed as though Cha-Cha didn't survive the moon exploding at the end of the first season, yet in episode 8, we see a commission agent carrying what looked to be Cha-Cha's mask, and it's a pretty distinctive one. This could have been an entirely different agent, but according to showrunner Steve Blackman, it could have been Cha-Cha holding the mask. Is this just an Easter egg relating to Cha-Cha, or a clue that she's alive and well, and could show up again in season 3? When Creed Bratton described his experiences with cults on The Office, he said, "Followers have more fun, but leaders make more money," and this certainly seems to coincide with Klaus's experiences. Between his powers, the help of his brother Ben, and his natural charm, he made amassing a ton of loyal followers look easy. He called them Destiny's Children, a clear reference to musical group Destiny's Child. And honestly, Klaus's second season style may not quite have been on Beyonce's level, but he's getting there. This wasn't the only musical reference Klaus made, as he quoted TLC's Waterfalls as well as Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive and Everybody by the Backstreet Boys.
Destiny's Children!
Obviously, there's a lot of history mixed in with this season of the Umbrella Academy, and not all of it has to do with pop music. Most people believe that Lee Harvey Oswald took aim at President John F. Kennedy from the window of the Texas School Bank Depository, which is a building we actually saw during episode 9. Usually, leaving a note for someone is considerate, but not when you're trying to leave behind your controlling husband and start a new life. That's a lesson Sissy learned the hard way when Vanya was taken into custody and interrogated by the FBI. They were not messing around, to say the least, and plunged Vanya into a deep, dark part of her psyche. This scene is set to Partita 2 in D minor on violin, which makes sense for a few reasons. The first is that Vanya is an accomplished violinist, and the second is that in the comics, she's known as the White Violin. This song isn't the only notable comic book reference contained in this scene. Vanya is understandably upset and frustrated with her inability to control her powers. She questions why her siblings are able to, while she does things like blow up the moon and bring about the apocalypse multiple times, which is a fair question. Thankfully, her brother Ben is there to point out that everyone else in the Umbrella Academy received years of training along with the emotional pain inflicted upon them by Reginald, while Vanya only got the latter. He says Reginald treated her like a bomb before she was one, which seems to tie into the graphic novel finale, or Brothers and Sisters, I Am an Atomic Bomb. Earlier, when I mentioned the Majestic 12, I said that we'd get back to the whole Reginald Hargreaves as an alien thing, and that time has come. Comic book fans knew this going into it since it's addressed early on in the series. We saw clues that this was the case in the first season, and the second left no doubt that Reginald is from another planet. But before he tears off his human suit and unleashes his rage on the Majestic 12, one of his associates mentioned that Reginald was interested in learning more about the dark side of the moon. Does this mean there really was some reason he sent Luther there? Or was Reginald just a really big Pink Floyd fan? The Umbrella Academy members are always willing to think the worst of Reginald, but to be honest, he usually deserves it. They suspected that he had something to do with the plot against JFK after seeing a man with a black umbrella standing near the motorcade. Reginald ended up using a stand-in, and it turned out that he was not aware of his co-conspirators' true motives that fateful day. But what some fans might not realize is that there really was an Umbrella Man there that day. Some people suspected that he was planted there by the CIA in order to twirl his umbrella to signal Lee Harvey Oswald. His name is Louis Stephen Witt, and he simply wanted to heckle JFK as he rode by. The exact circumstances surrounding the loss of Ben have been a mystery, but Season 2 gave us a glimpse of his funeral and more evidence that Reginald really hates kids.
You allowed number 6 to die on this mission.
It wasn't our fault.
Not only did he make insensitive comments to his surviving children, but he decorated Ben's coffin with squid tentacles, which seems to be in pretty bad taste. We finally saw more of Ben using his powers when 5 arrived in the past, but it still seems like an unnecessary grim addition to his final resting place. When Allison heads back to the present with her family, she leaves a note behind for her husband Ray. She left it inside of From the Earth to the Moon by Jules Verne, which is a book Ray gave her as a gift in the first episode. He commented that Allison was always looking at the moon, which could have either been because she was thinking of Luther or because she was worried about it exploding again.
I see you staring at it every night, so now you can see it whenever you want.
This season was not short on Easter eggs and hidden references. Did you manage to spot any that we missed?